What's up everyone? Today I'm going to give you a free dynamic sliding motion graphic. I'm also going to show you how to create this in After Effects. There's a lot of expressions, so let's get started. I'm currently building out a massive text plugin that is very powerful, and it allows you to stack different effects on top of each other, which is pretty dope. Now this will probably be released next week, but for now, I'm going to show you what we're going to be creating today. So in the Essential Graphics panel within Premiere Pro, we have this slide text template. And the powerful thing with this is you can change the intro duration, the outro duration, and the duration of your text layer. What this means, if I go to the intro, you can see that it's 2 seconds. I can basically change where this text slides in from. So let's drag it to the left, and as you see, it'll slide in from the left. And that slide is based on words. I can base it on a line if I want the entire template to slide in like that. Now the fun thing is I can actually change this intro duration to, let's say, 4 seconds, and that will slide in nice and slow. What does this mean? Let's change that intro to 1 so it's nice and quick. Our duration is 5 seconds. So now if I go to 5 seconds, our animation should be complete. So what's our outro animation? Well, let's just have this slide to the right because that makes sense, and I'm going to slide it on words in a random order because I can also check this random order. So now if I play that back, it slides in pretty quick at 1 second. Then once I get to around 3 seconds, it's going to start sliding away because my outro duration is 2 seconds and my actual duration is 5 seconds. It allows you to completely customize your text layer without having to keyframe anything. Like right now I made my duration 10 seconds, and as this plays along, it's going to go all the way to 10 seconds before the animation is complete. It's pretty powerful, and as you can see by the intro tutorial, all these are simply that text layers with different parameters and settings with my motion graphic. So let's jump into After Effects and show you how to do it. Before we get started, I actually wanted to explain the linear function because that will seriously help you with this video. Now, in essence, the linear function will allow us to return certain values based on the time that we have. This will all make sense in a second, but the linear function will return value 1 when t is less than or equal to t min, which basically means that we'll get this number when this number is greater than or equal to the time that we set. Now equally, we can return value 2 when t is greater than or equal to t max. Now this also means that we will get this number when this number is less than or equal to time. I want to show you an example of this straight from the After Effects manual. So let's say I want to change the opacity from 0 to 100% in the time frame of 0 seconds to 6 seconds. So on the opacity, I'm going to hold Alt on a PC or Option on a Mac and click the little stopwatch and type in linear. Now in this function, my first parameter is going to actually be time. And then the next one is going to be our t-min, which time at 0 seconds, and then comma. And then my max time is 6 seconds, because that's how long I want this to last. And then comma. And then what do I want to happen? Well, at 0 seconds, I want it to be 0 opacity, and then comma. And then at 6 seconds, I want the opacity to be 100. And then I'm going to close this off by a little semicolon. And as you can see, from 0 to 6 seconds, our opacity is going to go from 0% all the way up to 100%. In essence, this is the expression that we're going to be using today, so let's just jump into it. So this is finally the start of how to make the expression-based slide template. Click on this Create New Composition button, and let's just make this whatever we want. Let's make it 1 minute long, and just click OK. Now in here, we're going to right click down in the timeline area and select New Adjustment Layer. Click Enter on this adjustment layer and rename it Control. Now what we want to do is go to the Effects Controls and click this lock button because we don't really want this to move. Right click in here and go down to Expression Controls and click Slider Control. Hold Control or Command D, duplicate that so we have 3 of them. Let's click Enter on the first one and let's type Intro Duration. Let's click Enter on the second one and type Outro Duration. Let's click enter on the third one and type in duration. Now we can actually start to create our text layer. So right click down in the timeline area, select new text. Let's type in whatever we want. You can resize your text, you can do whatever you want, but I'm just gonna do this and I'm gonna align it to the center of my composition. So now we have our text layer. I typically like putting my control layer on the top, but it really does not matter. Click the down arrows on your text layer, and as you can see under the text, we have a ton of options that we can manipulate. However, what we're going to be doing is expression-based manipulation. So we need to actually click this animate button. Under this animation button, this will actually work with just about anything you see here. So once you learn how to do this, you can actually apply it to any of these. Since we're going to be doing slides, let's select on the position. And now under this animator 1, let's simply click enter and rename it to slide in so that we know what we are working with. Now, if you click the down arrow under range selector and under advanced, you'll see that we have a ton of options here. And if you start sliding these things around, nothing's really happening. So we actually need to change something. If you simply change this position value down, you'll see that it drags our text off the screen. And then watch what happens. If we drag our start value up, it starts animating these text values in. So what do we need to do? Well, I'm going to show you. We basically want to make an expression on this start layer, since if you drag this to 100%, you'll see that our text is finally revealed since our position was off the screen. So let's set that back to 0. You won't see any text, and let's hold Alt or Option on a Mac and select that start stopwatch. We need to start creating the animation intro expression. So I'm going to type T equals time minus the endpoint, and then semicolon. Basically, I want the time to be referenced at the endpoint of the layer, no matter where the layer is in your composition or Premiere. And then click enter. So I'm going to say A and then capital on for animation on. And you can name these values whatever you want, but I think this helps me. So A on for animation on equals, and then I'm simply going to take this little pick whip right here and drag it up to the intro duration slider, since that's what we want to reference, and then click a semicolon. Basically, that'll allow us to set the duration of the animation on to that slider. Now I'm going to click enter again because I like to stay clean. Now type linear. And now that we know what linear functions do, this should make a little bit more sense. So type T for time, which is referencing the endpoint, comma, and then I'm going to type 0 because at the time min, I want it to be 0, which is the beginning of the layer. And then I'm going to type comma, and then I'm going to simply type A on because that will basically mean the max duration of our time will be the slider control, which is the intro duration. So if we set that to 2, that will make that number 2. Now let's make a comma, and now we need to make our values. What do we want to happen? Well, I just showed you earlier that from 0% to 100%, our start animation happened. So simply type 0 to 100. And then once you're done with that, you can click away, and you'll see that if we play this, nothing happens. Well, that's because we've never actually set the intro duration up here. So let's set this to 3 seconds. And as you see, when we play this along, in 3 seconds, our slide animation is going to happen. So a little bit of quality life right here. Let's show you a couple different parameters down here and what they do. As you can see, the based on, you can simply base it on words, characters, or lines, like I explained in the intro. It's sliding in a simple linear fashion. Now let's change this. You can change the ease high and the ease low. If you change the ease low to 100%, you'll see that it slides in really fast and then slows down once it gets into there. Now if you change the ease high to 100% and the ease low to 0%, you'll see that it starts off slow and then whips in really fast. So play around with these and you'll get a look that you like, but I found that keeping them both at 75 is pretty smooth in both directions. So now you have the intro done. What I'm going to do now is basically duplicate this on the outro layer, which is a little different, and then we're going to start building out this motion graphic template. Let's minimize that layer and then select on our text layer and then select animate position. And let's click enter on animator 1 and do slide out. So now it's the same concept. What do we want to happen? And this one gets a little bit more complex. So basically we need to look at what's happening. Again, the start and the end, nothing's really happening. So what do we need to do? Well, let's slide this text layer down. So like before, if I simply drag my start value up, you'll see that this animates in, but I actually need to animate it out. So wouldn't you say I go from 100% down to 0? Well, that's actually not correct, because as you can see, I'm going from the right-hand side. So what we actually need to do is set both of these values to 0% and then change our start value from 0 to 100%. As you can see, now it's animating from the start of our text layer and forward. All I did was change the end duration from 100 down to 0. So let's hold Option or Alt and click on our little stopwatch right here and start our expression. T equals time minus the endpoint, because we want to reference the endpoint at all times, and then semicolon, enter. And now what I want to do is something different. I actually want to type D, because we're going to be bringing in that duration slider. And I'm going to say that equals the duration slider. So let's grab this little pick whip and come up here to the duration slider and then add a semicolon on at the end. Now I'm going to type A off for animation off equals, and then I'm simply going to pick whip that animation off slider, or the outro duration slider, so that that slider would basically control the outro duration. Add a semicolon. Now let's click enter so I can stay organized, and we're going to type this expression, linear, and then time, and our time min is going to be the duration of the entire comp. So that means that as long as the entire comp is happening, that is going to be our minimum value. And then I'm going to hit comma, and then our T max value is actually going to be D minus A off, because we want to reference the outro duration and subtract that from the actual duration to let After Effects know when our animation should finish. And simply type a comma, and now we know that we want to go from 0% all the way up to 100%. So what this means now is if I change my outro duration to, let's say, 2 seconds, and then our duration of our comp to 5 seconds, you'll see that we animate in 3 seconds, and then right away, since our duration is only 5 seconds, our outro duration is going to start at 3 seconds, because we only have 2 seconds left. And that will start to slide away just like so. And like before, you can change these ease high values to, let's say, 75%, so that will get that look. And as you see, we basically created this animation. Now we just have to make it a template. So in order to start making this a template, head up to Window and down to Essential Graphics. You'll see this panel, and we need to select a composition, the KH slide template. Now we can name this whatever we want. Slide template, that looks good to me. And you can set a poster time that will basically pick an image, and you can rename that whatever you want. It's based on your text layer. So you can actually solo supported properties, and this will give you everything that you can physically drag into this essential graphic. For starters, let's drag the source text up, and then let's rename that to text, because that will allow us to change the text, hello world. You can also click this edit properties button and enable custom font selection, adjustments, and font styles. This will allow you to, let's say, make all the letters bold and change the, size and all that other fun stuff. So I like keeping those selected. Next, let's actually drag in our sliders. So let's come down here in the timeline. Let's drag our intro duration slider and our outro duration slider and the overall duration slider. You can edit these ranges. I typically like locking these down. So let's say 15 seconds just for this example. And the outro duration, let's lock it down to 15 seconds. One thing to keep in mind on the duration, it's only going to work for as long as your composition is. So if you know that this text needs to be longer than a minute, then make your composition a little bit longer. That way we can modify these parameters and basically change it up like that. your duration cannot be shorter than these two numbers combined. For example, if I set my duration to 5, it's going to do something funky and it's actually going to speed up these animations and it's not actually going to work. So make sure your duration is definitely longer than your intro and outro durations. Next, let's start looking at what else we can include in here. For starters, we're going to be working in the slide in only right now. And I want to drag in the based on. So the based on will allow us to change what the animation is based on. For example, I have characters selected. I can choose words as well. So it will slide in each word. Let's name this to slide in based on, just to stay organized. And equally so, we can actually drag in the slide out based on. So now we have that, I want to show you something really unique. So if I do my slide in based on characters excluding spaces, you'll see that this slides in like so. Now, what if I want to make this random? So I can click this randomize order button, and that's actually going to slide in all of these characters randomly. Let's drag that in and put it beneath the slide in based on, and rename it to slide in random. Because that will allow us to change all those parameters. Equally so, let's go under slide out and drag the randomize order and change this to slide out. Now you can drag in anything you want, but I'm going to show you a couple more options that you have here. Check out under slide in. You can see we're sliding in randomly from the bottom. Now you could change the position where this slides in, and we're going to add that later. This amount slider right here, you can actually drag that to -100% and watch what happens. It actually slides down from the top. Now you might not actually use this, but I've found that I've used it quite a bit. So we're going to drag that in there, and we're going to just call this slide in offset, and you'll find out later why you use that. Let's go down here under the slide out and change this to slide out offset, because this is kind of cool when you start playing around with it. All right, so the last thing that we kind of need is basically to add our position values in here. So under slide in, let's drag our position up, and we can put that up to the top if we want. So slide in position, and then let's drag our position under slide out and put it at the top of our slide out things. So now we have everything in here that I theoretically would want. I can change all these parameters. I can change how fast the animation is. So the slide in is going to be based on words, and let's make it 3 seconds. And then let's also change the direction that it slides in from. So if you set these values to 0, you can start to drag this to the right. And then if we play that through, it'll slide in from the right. And then once we get to, let's say, 6 seconds, it's going to start to do our outro animation, which is currently based on characters. But again, since we've made this, you can change this however you want. Now, one final thing that I would tell you to do is play around and add any more settings and manipulations that you want to your essential graphics. But I would highly recommend to click P on your text layer and drag this up beneath your text. And you're going to name this global position, because some scenarios you'll want to be able to change this layer. For example, if you just want this to come into the bottom like this and change the size so it's like kind of like a lower third, then you'll have the ability to have this lower third animate in to the bottom by changing the global position. Sweet. So now what we have to do is export this as a motion graphics template. Click save. We're going to save to our local drive, and let's browse where we want to save it. That looks great. And let's name this slide template final version. Let's do the keyword final version so we can find it easier. Click OK. Now head on into Premiere, and then let's click this little button down at the bottom right. Click our final version, and then now it's imported. We can type final and find it. So let's just drag that into Premiere. Now we have our motion graphic that we can change. This was really fun. So with all these parameters, we can simply change what is going on. We can change the global position. We can move all this stuff around. We can change it based on characters or characters' words. We can make it not slide in randomly, so it all slides in like this. You have the ability to adjust the font, and then again, the global position. So if you have a lower third name, Kyler Holland, sweet, it goes like that. We animate in Kyler Holland. Let's make that a little bit faster. And then after 6 seconds, it's going to animate out. And what does it do? It slides away, but you have everything in your power to change what happened when it slides away and what direction it also slides away in. So if I want this to actually slide up, I can do that as well. The final thing I'll mention is actually once your duration finishes, like this one's currently 6 seconds, you don't actually need this text layer anymore. You can simply click C on your keyboard, make a cut, and delete that back half. But the fun thing about this template is that you can actually stack these animations, move them around, change the global positions. So Kyler Holland, let's say tutorials, so that when you are playing around with it, they'll actually modify on top of each other, which is pretty dope. And then once you start playing with the different offsets and what's going on, you can really get a dynamic slide text-based animation without keyframing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This is pretty powerful and it's advanced. If you stayed around to the end, be sure to click the link in the description because that will actually get you this pack for free. But if you stayed along, I hope you learned something new, and I'm going to be making some more stuff in the future. As always, click that like button and let me know what you think down in the comments below. I'll see you guys next time.